Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. Reggae music was born on the rugged streets of Kingston in the 1960s and exploded out of Jamaica, with its influence reverberating across the four corners of the globe. But before it took over the airwaves worldwide, its second home was Great Britain, a country that in no time developed its own indigenous superstars. If I were to ask 10 people who the first king of British reggae was, 9 of them would likely reel off names like Aswad, Pulse or UB40. But while those guys were still in high school, you had a man called Judge Dredd. The man was literally a giant in every way. This 6'+ ska reggae singer had a sense of humor that was as big as his frame. An absolutely groundbreaking artist, he was an extremely successful one as well, and sold millions and millions of records in his prime, and in a commercial sense was second only to Bob Marley in UK reggae record sales in the 1970s. This naughty giant also entered the record books for having the most songs banned from the airwaves by the authorities on account of the lewd, outrageous innuendos and lyrics that he unleashed in his music. His delivery and lyrics were incredibly witty and humorous and would win him legions of followers and a massive fan base in Britain despite the clampdown on his music by the government. Though dismissed by many as being a novelty act in later years, it's important to note that he was the first white reggae artist to have a song make waves in Jamaica, a fact unheard of in those times. A cultural icon in his heydays, he wasn't just a star artist, but typified and embodied the quintessential British reggae-loving skinhead of 1970s. Let's take a look at the life and times of the amazing Judge Dredd, the first true king of British reggae. He was born Alexander Minto Hughes in the small quiet town of Snodland in Kent on May 2nd, 1945. After finishing from secondary school, the then teenager decided to leave the countryside and make his way to London to find a job in late 1961. It was in the big city that he would collide with a new culture and by extension, his destiny. Those were the peak years of the immigration wave known popularly today as the Windrush generation, a wave that saw thousands of people from the Caribbean emigrate to Britain for a better life and opportunities. Many of them would settle in London, and with those communities came their culture in the form of their food, lingo, and most tellingly, their music. These thriving Caribbean communities were often homesick and would organize house parties or dances at public halls, where their music was in full effect. These Jamaicans, jamming their music from their speakers, lived in humble neighborhoods where the working class English people also lived, and their music would catch on with their neighbors as well. It was into this environment that young Alex Hughes would get immersed in when he moved to London in 1962. He found affordable accommodation by renting a room in a house owned and lived in by a West Indian family in the heart of Brixton, southwest London, an area with a heavy Caribbean population. It was in the home of this Caribbean family that he came in contact with ska for the first time, and he quickly fell head over heels in love with the music. Standing tall at 6 feet 4 inches tall, he was a very big lad, and his size quickly got him a job as a bouncer at a popular nightclub called the Ram Jam. That was the era of ska's exploding popularity in Britain, and UK record label Blue Beat had organized a tour of England for one of his biggest artists in ska superstar Prince Buster. Young Alex's mind was blown when Prince Buster and fellow ska artist Derek Morgan would visit the club where he was working as a bouncer. He would get hired as a bodyguard for Prince Buster during his UK tour, and did so well that he got suggested for the same gig to protect producer Coxsone Dodd and Duke Reid when they also came to the UK. These early encounters would take his love for Jamaican music to the very next level. In those days, he was working as a professional wrestler called the Masked Executioner before he got a job with the UK's then biggest record label, Trojan Records, as a bouncer, muscle and debt collector. And by the end of the 1960s, he was working as a DJ with a local radio station and was also running his own sound system. But it was his idol, Prince Buster, who would inspire him to become a recording artist, and particularly a very naughty one. Prince Buster released a sexually explicit song called Big Five, and Alex loved that song to bits and used his connections to Trojan Records to record his own version or follow-up to the song at Label Studio for a token sum of just £6. His version was a rehash of nursery rhymes that he replaced with his lewd lyrics. and was actually very catchy. By sheer accident of fate, Trojan Records boss Lee Gopdal was walking by the studio during the recording and was so impressed by what he heard that he signed Alex to the label immediately. And Alex chose the stage name Judge Dredd from another Prince Buster song, and when that track, which he called Big Six, hit the streets, it became a solid underground hit. But when Trojan Records signed a distribution deal with EMI in 1972, the song rocketed into the UK charts, reaching number 11 and selling 300,000 copies before the end of the year. The song was so naughty that the BBC banned it, but that did nothing but help its commercial performance. It came under heavy attack in the media, just like Max Romeo's track Wet Dream had received for its naughty content. The song Big Six was also very popular in Jamaica that year, and Judge Dredd was invited over there to perform it. Excited fans thronged the venue, thinking the song had been done by a UK-based Jamaican, and when they saw Alex, they first thought that he was the bodyguard to Judge Dredd. And they were all stunned when he stepped up to the microphone and began to perform the song, and they all learned that it was a white dude who had done Big Six. He would follow up his incredible debut with Big Seven, which turned out to be an even bigger hit than Big Six, as it reached number 8 in the UK charts, and was followed by another big single named Big 8. On the strength of these singles' successes, he released his debut album Dreadmania in 1973. It didn't do so well on the charts, but his singles were hot cake and big sellers. He would score a massive hit with his cover of Serge Gainsbourg's naughty masterpiece Je t'aime moi non plus in 1975, and even managed the impossible feat of making his own version even naughtier than Gainsbourg's. Those were the days of Dreadmania, as everything he touched seemed to turn to gold. From the single Big 10, which breached the top 10, his album Bedtime Stories was also a sizable hit, and a double holiday single named Christmas in Dreadland was also a smash. By 1976, the skinhead movement had begun to weaken, and Judge Dredd would immortalize his feelings in the album titled The Last of the Skinheads. He was still a bankable star though, and kept putting out hit singles and albums that charted over the years. And by the end of the 1970s, no other reggae artist has sold more records in Britain than he had, with the exception of Bob Marley, of course. With the dawn of the 1980s and the rise of some serious new kids on the block like Steel Pulse and UB40, Judge Dredd's dominance began to fade, though he kept putting out music sporadically over the years, even up into the 1990s. But despite his weakened star power, he still retained a solid loyal fan base that still flocked to his live shows all over Britain to relive the glory days of the skinhead era and enjoy the hilarious showmanship that he brought to the table. Sadly, he played his last show on March 13, 1998 at a nightclub in Canterbury, where he delivered a good show as usual. After he finished his act, he turned to the audience and said, "Let's hear it for the band." Those would turn out to be his last words as he collapsed right there on the stage. At first the audience thought it was part of the act and Judge Dredd just being his usual humorous self. But by the time a paramedic got to him a minute later, they all realized it wasn't. He was rushed to the hospital and pronounced dead from a heart attack at the age of 53. And that was the end of the great Judge Dredd, a consummate performer and true lover of the culture. These days, he's not regarded as being much more than a novelty act, and I feel that's a bit unfair to his legacy. He may not have done serious, conscious material, but he took his craft very seriously, and I dare say that he did a lot in putting English people onto reggae music a few years before it really went mainstream in England. In my humble opinion, the great Judge Dredd was the first true king of British reggae. So there you have it. Thank you for watching this video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.